Hi there and welcome.
You're listening to Animals and Us, Voices of a New Paradigm.
My name is Avantika, and I'm a researcher exploring animal consciousness, environmental sustainability, and planetary health. I want to help bring animal perspectives to the table and transform our relationship with the natural world.
And I'm Barbara. I'm an animal communicator and retired veterinarian. My true passion is exploring the hearts and souls of animals and helping people come to a much deeper understanding of who the animals truly are at their core.
This podcast is for anyone who loves animals and nature and has an interest in their own personal and spiritual development. We'll bring you powerful conversations with fascinating people about animal and nature sentience, consciousness, and communication.
Thank you so much for joining us on this journey of love, respect, understanding, and care for the fellow beings who share our beautiful Mother Earth with us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Animals and Us, Voices of a New Paradigm. We're so excited to introduce our guest for today, Viktoria Hinz, to all of you. I first met Viktoria about 5 or 6 years ago through the research that's happening in Canada at the University of Saskatchewan that's focused on animal communication, or this term called IIC, which you might hear us refer to in today's conversation. And IIC stands for Intuitive Interspecies Communication. And it's a term that we're using in the academic world to dive into this topic and explore it. So over the years, I've had the absolute pleasure of working alongside Viktoria on a number of different projects and different events. And although we've known each other now, I think for 5 or 6 years, we've actually never met in person. But we're going to be meeting in July, and we are so excited about that. And by the time this airs, actually, hopefully we will have already met Viktoria. Viktoria is someone that I've really come to admire over the years, not only for how dedicated she is to her work, but also how she understands things, how she explains things, her attention to detail in this work, and just the love and sincerity that she brings to this work. Barbara and I were both really proud and really honored to attend Viktoria's PhD defense recently, where she presented her years of research focused on animal communicators and their lived experiences communicating intuitively with animals. And it was such a meaningful moment to witness, especially knowing how long she's been walking this path and how much heart and soul she's poured into it. Viktoria is originally from Germany and has a background in conservation and environmental studies. And over time, her work has evolved into exploring how animals and humans might relate to one another in deeper, more connected ways. Her research looks at what animal communicators actually experience during their communication, how they make sense of it, and what this could mean for the future of conservation, ethics, and human-animal relationships. So today we're going to talk about her journey into this work, what it was like or what it is like to study a topic like IIC within academia, what she has learned from speaking with animal communicators, and where she hopes this research might lead in the future. Viktoria, we're so happy to have you here. Welcome to our show.
Thank you. I am super excited to be here. This has been a long time coming.
Yes.
And what a lovely introduction. Thank you so much, Avantika. And hi, Barbara, again. It's super lovely to be sitting here with both of you. I was so excited and looking forward to this.
I'm really happy you're here too. I'm very excited as well.
And like you said, Viktoria, it's been a long time coming. So we finally did it. We're here, we're together. And so let's jump right in. First of all, first and foremost, congratulations on defending your PhD. Woohoo! That is super exciting. How does it feel to have completed this journey? I know how hard you worked on it and how long you were waiting for this moment.
It's super fantastic to be done. And I mean, it's only been almost a month now since I defended, right? So it's still setting in, like the realization is still trickling in. And yeah, it's just, a little bit of a weight falling off of the pressure of like doing a degree and then defending your research. And I'm just so grateful for the community that I was embedded in, and like, for example, like having you and Barbara also at the defense, and there were so many people who showed up in the Zoom. Like we did an open defense, and I think my supervisor, Dr. Barrett, probably talked about her quite a bit already on the podcast. She said there were like at some point 30 people online, and it was just such a great showing of support and interest. And I just felt so held and blessed with that. And so I really appreciate the broader IIC research community, which like, also includes communicators and other interested people. So yeah.
It was so nice that we were able to join, and wherever we were in different parts of the world, I think everyone was just like cheering you on and felt excited to be there. And at the end as well, I think everyone was getting emotional. Even though we weren't there with you in person, we could just feel the energy. And I wanted to ask you actually, because I was speaking to someone recently who didn't know what a PhD defense was and how that process works.
Mhm.
Maybe quickly, you can just explain to us what that process is like and what exactly is the defense.
So, at our university, like I think it might be a little bit different from university to university and degree to degree, but every PhD has a committee that consists of faculty members who are guiding you throughout your degree, who are giving you feedback, and who also at the end have the duty to examine you on your research and on your final product. And so that means that you come together at a certain time, and when the research is complete, and I was basically presenting my results, I had, I think, up to 15 minutes. So you have to pack lots of years of work into 15 minutes. And then after that, the committee will ask, one or two rounds of questions about the research. And they're basically evaluating you on the work that you've done and on your capacity to also answer those questions. And then ideally, you're being passed.
Okay, and
That's when you,
on
yeah.
that note, let's just acknowledge for a moment that you passed with flying colors with no changes to your thesis, which I hear is very rare. So let's just, yeah, that must, I don't know. How did that feel?
It was super exciting and super unexpected for me too. I knew I had put in a lot of hard work, right? But I didn't expect that. And I was just so happy afterwards.
And I was tuning in at night, like it was my evening here for me in Belgium. And I was on such a high after watching that whole thing. And
Oh.
it was really wonderful. And you did such a great job. Tell us for the people who are listening, who might be new to this world, especially, in academia, how we're calling it IIC. How do you explain intuitive interspecies communication in simple
Mhm.
terms?
Yeah, okay. So I have a few notes about that.
Mhm.
So since my research was descriptive, rather than explanatory, I usually give people a short definition that comes out of my research and that focuses on the experience of intuitive interspecies communication, or what what us researchers, that's the term we often use for animal communication. And so the short definition is basically that intuitive interspecies communication is the experience of a relational exchange of information with an animal who is also experienced as meaningfully engaged with the human subject. And because IIC can be experienced in the physical proximity to animals, but also over large distances that eliminate conventional cues that other forms of communication rely on, such as like body language and voice or auditory cues. Um, That is, by the way, what my research focused on the remote version of IIC. And what is significant for this remote version of IIC is that despite the animal's absence, they are experienced as present to the communicator during the intuitive communication, often in very tangible ways, and also, again, as meaningfully engaged. So it can feel like the animal is right there with you, even though they're absent. And the central experiential basis for this intuitive exchange is the experience of intuitive impressions. And I don't know if you've mentioned this on the podcast before in any way, but they're basically, these impressions are the experience based on which animal communicators perceive and experience messages from animals. And they're also what makes the animal feel present to the communicator. And these intuitive impressions come in several different forms, or can come in different forms, such as seeing pictures or movie-like visuals in the mind's eye, experiencing sounds, tastes, smells, bodily sensations, like experiencing pain in a specific part of your body, emotions, the experience of words or sentences. So some communicators hear words in their head, or even see them in their mind's eye. And then there's also a sense of immediate knowing of information without it being connected to any of these other forms of impressions. And so these are the different ways in which information can be experienced to come through. And what is kind of significant for the definition of intuitive impressions, what I found in my research, is that while these are experiences that manifest in the communicator's awareness, so just for example, let's say the smell of smoke, the communicator can neither trace the experience to an external source that is present in their perceivable physical environment, like burnt food on the stove, um, or they can also not trace it to their personal inner life, such as daydreaming of having a bonfire, for example. And so, really, what is important is that there is a discernment of, this is coming not from me, not from my environment, this is coming from somewhere else. And also discernment of, this is coming specifically from the animal that I am intending to communicate to. And that is kind of what qualifies the recognition of intuitive impressions. Um, does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's great. Actually, we haven't, I mean, we've talked about communicating with animals from many different angles on this podcast, from many different perspectives with different people, but I'm not sure we really um, you know, gone that deep into what it is, or at least from like a researcher's point of view, what you would actually be studying. So thank you for that. That was really helpful. And now tell us, because your background was, you were doing different things in your bachelor's degree, your master's degree. So what
Hmm.
led you personally to pursue a PhD on a topic like this?
Okay, so I'll start with the short version. So really, because of my background training in nature conservation, one of the things that I'm really super interested in is, the applications that already exist of IIC in conservation contexts. There are many communicators who collaborate, for example, with wildlife rehabilitation efforts and so forth. And that is kind of what really piqued my interest. And the potential possibility of drawing on that really intentionally to facilitate, human animal coexistence in many different contexts on different levels. Um, and yeah, and along the way, I also just became super fascinated with the experience of it, with everything that communicators told me about the dimension and depth of their intuitive communication experiences and connections with animals. And so that is the short answer.
I have a question before you dive into the longer version, if you would like, is you mentioned
Yeah.
that, there are examples of animal communicators collaborating
Hmm.
wildlife conservationists or with projects about that. Could you give us some
Hmm.
examples if you have any?
Yeah, so as far as I know, Linda Tucker and the White Lion Trust, I think it is.
Wildlife
They're
Protection Trust.
White Lion Protection
Global
Trust.
White Lion Protection Trust. Yeah.
There you go, Barbara has it. Yeah, so they're collaborating with animal communicators, I think especially with winter worsthorn, to bring information from intuitive communications into their decision making and into their approaches to their conservation efforts, which is one just one example. I think there's also an organization called Panthera, um, also situated in South Africa, as far as I understand. And I read their statement on their homepage, and they're really in incorporating IIC in their management and decision making processes, and are also training their staff in IIC. And those approaches are really fascinating to me because um, I'm just interested in what it could look like to work together with animals, to work together with nature at large, as opposed to, manage an objectified nature or manage animals from top down, right? Which just doesn't give the beings that are impacted by our decisions a lot of say in the matters that impact them.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'd like to add something. Panthera, a long time ago, we interviewed Catherine Nyquist, who is one of the co-founders of Panthera in Africa, and I spent a month there volunteering, and it's really wonderful. Recently, they had a big fire, and a
Oh
lot of
no.
the place was devastated. And they're still rebuilding from that, but they do communicate with the animals very regularly, and it's great. And I'd also like to add, I've recently found out about some other groups that are working with wildlife conservation and IIC. There's one that I think you were at the meeting too, maybe. The
Hmm.
Ocean Transformation Program, they're working with especially marine mammals in the oceans. There's another group that are specifically working with wildlife and trying to and having communication with some of the wild animals to help with the conservation projects. It's really exciting what's happening.
Yeah, I agree. And really, I think that was also one thing that got me hooked eventually, right? So my doctoral supervisor, Dr. Barrett, she shared with me the the clip coming from that documentary on Anna Breitenbach's work, The Animal Communicator. And there is a clip of her communicating with or was it a black leopard?
Yeah.
Um, a black leopard called Spirit. And so witnessing her work with the animal concretely and like seeing that in a documentary, that just caught my attention to the degree that I couldn't forget about it. And it just made me really curious.
Yeah. I think that video went global and
Yeah.
affected a lot of people. She's probably well, I'm sure she's the best known communicator at this point because of that film. Yeah.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
Victoria, I mean, I'm so excited about your PhD in this field because when I started doing this stuff, it was seen as very, very bizarre, and most people didn't get it, particularly in academia and
Hmm.
in science and all that world. Um, so it's really fantastic that that you've gotten your PhD in this field. It's opening up so many doors, and I think it's helped to open up the door for Avantika in her program as well. You started this whole thing. It's very wonderful. So, what was the main focus of your research, and what were you really hoping to understand by doing this?
So I guess for clarity's sake, it's important to mention that while I am interested in like the conservation context, right, that wasn't the focus of my thesis. When I started this program, the study program, I realized that I really needed to dig into outlining some baseline knowledge about what's happening for animal communicators and how they engage in IIC. So basically, my central question was, what do animal communicators concretely experience during intuitive communications with animals, specifically during remote intuitive communications, and what are their processes? Like, what do they concretely do to engage in these intuitive communications? And at the time, I just found myself um, dissatisfied with the detail and um, amount of insight that was there about these things. Um, and, there is a lot of research is happening now, and much more has come out. But I hope that I can really contribute to solidifying the baseline knowledge on these questions. And so maybe a few words about, why that is relevant. So there is much of what animal communicators do and experience during intuitive communications happens inside their bodies and minds. So this is where the intuitive impressions manifest, right? You experience like sensations in your body, you experience the emotions internally, you hear or see things in your mind's eye or in your mind's ear, so to speak. And so because of that, a lot of what communicators experience and also do to engage and navigate in these intuitive communications is just invisible to outside observers. And that, because it is such a central part, though, this is where the communication happens. It's important, I find, for research going forward to be based on a robust understanding of what is going on, of the experiences, the processes, the dynamics of what is happening there. And that is relevant in many ways. So, for example, for researchers, it helps to choose appropriate research methods. It can really support the robustness of your research design, because that way, for example, if you design your research in a way that is actually counterproductive to the communicator that you're working with, or that is supportive of their practice, and which is just one simple example. And I was also aiming to provide a shared descriptive understanding and vocabulary for researchers and animal communicators and any other people who might be interested in collaborating in research projects going forward, to have a shared understanding and a shared vocabulary to communicate effectively. So, for example, having the definition of intuitive impressions, right? And also having definitions of the sense-making processes that are happening for communicators to make sense of the impressions that they're experiencing. And then in addition, for animal communicators, having such descriptive baseline knowledge can serve as reference points and reflection bases when, reflecting on their own practice, or when you're learning IIC to begin with, to kind of have an orientation point, and to discuss their experiences and processes with any other people who are interested in it, like prospective clients or researchers, or practitioners who are working with animals, such as veterinarians. And then for anybody interested in IIC, it provides an answer to the question of what are communicators' reports of intuitive communications and of animals' messages based on. Where is this information coming from? And it's coming from these intuitive impressions, and from the sense making processes that are happening, in also in relationship with the actions that communicators take to support clear communication. Um, yeah, and so that is just a little bit of a window into the reasoning and into why these things are important.
So, on a more personal level,
Mm-hmm.
we're working with these communicators for quite some time, I think. What do you think stuck with you the most about these people and their experiences, kind of on the ground level? What was that like?
First of all, it was super fun and rewarding to engage with everybody. And I guess I also want to give a shout out again to my research participants, because they're, shared their time and shared their experiences, and also in part very personal experiences with intuitive communications. And I'm just so thankful for that. And so I was impressed by that, forthcomingness and like openness to engage. Um, and there are a couple of things that really stuck with me, but I guess one of the biggest things was how much IIC, for somebody who's doing it, experiencing it very naturally and doing it on a regular basis, how much that can shape your world and your subjective experience of the world around you, and how much it can be such a normal dimension of reality for you. That animals are communicative, that animals have something to say. And I keep thinking of one communicator's experience she shared with me about, she started to communicate in childhood. She did it very naturally. And then for quite some time, she thought that everybody was just doing it. And only as she grew older was realizing, oh, not everybody is doing it. It's not necessarily even real for a lot of people, in their perception, because they're not experiencing it. And so it was a natural part of her world. And she eventually, you know, got into it as an adult again, trained some more, became an animal communicator. But then at some point in her career, she got sick. And during that time, it kind of blocked it. So she was really just not able to hear, in so to speak, hear the animals, to have the intuitive impressions. She just felt completely blocked from engaging in this way and from connecting to the animals around her. And it was just so horrible for her, because it really just, you could say, it deleted a part of her reality, part of her dimension. It was taking away one of her ways of accessing and experiencing the world. And so she expressed that, kind of like losing a limb. I actually have a citation here of her that might be interesting. So she said, I was distraught. I realized that part of me is a very important part of me. It's like having another arm or leg. It's like a superpower in a way. And when it went away, it was horrible. Imagine being able to do something your whole life, and then overnight it just stops. It was really horrible. But I pulled through that, thank goodness. So like eventually she recovered and it started to come back bit by bit. And then she was able to engage in her work as an animal communicator again. And it was just so, it really drove home for me that, our reality is shaped by the ways in which we perceive the world around us, by, our sensory abilities, by the ways, that our bodies are built, And for animal communicators, there's this additional dimension of the intuitive sense and intuitive connection. And it can feel just so normal and natural to people.
Wow,
And
what an
it's not
amazing
just
story.
communication.
What's that?
And
What?
I just wanted to say it's not just communicators, right, who experience IIC. Like IIC can happen spontaneously to people. And there are a lot of people who are engaging in IIC who are not professional animal communicators. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really important point that most of the animal communicators I've ever heard say that anyone can do it. It's a matter of
Mm-hmm.
practice and figuring out what works for you. That story about the communicator is really interesting. And, I
Mm-hmm.
just went through some health issues and I realized I was having trouble connecting too for a while. It's
Mm-hmm.
like your whole attention gets focused on the physical and it's
Mm-hmm.
harder to access something else, the more
Mm-hmm.
metaphysical kind of stuff. And, I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious too in your research. Um, like you said, this woman could communicate with animals from the time she remembers, it sounds like. But some people that I've understood, they can communicate from the time they're babies, and it's just natural for them. Other people
Mm-hmm.
aren't aware of it, and it happens later, kind of like it did for me. So it seems like it's really variable how this skill or this art form develops. Did you see a big difference in some of the people you spoke with?
Well, I did not focus on the developmental aspect in my research. So I was consciously choosing to talk to communicators who had a long practice and experience, who had been professional animal communicators for at least 10 years, because we were basically focusing on the sum of their experience and on how their processes and experience showed up across cases. But I think that is a really interesting topic for further research. And there's actually Megan Tucker is a PhD student on the West Coast, at the West Coast of Canada, who's currently doing her research, and she will be talking both to animal communicators about their experiences and to children who are experiencing intuitive communications. And so I'm super interested in what will come out of her research. And yeah, so for me, it was more like I wanted to make sure that I was engaging both with communicators who had experiences from childhood and um, some communicators who only learned it later in life, because I wanted to have a diverse participant pool to cover any variations that might come from different backgrounds in the practice and experience potentially. Um, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what Megan um, what Megan will find. Um, I am just remembering there's maybe also a side note I should drop about my research, which can be like a lot of people can misunderstand the research because it's very easy for people to feel like the experience or like the concept of IIC challenges their worldview, or it challenges what they know about animals. And so a lot of the time there's this reaction of wanting to have proof first. Even though in research it's really important to also have a descriptive basis of what you're looking at first, right? And um, there are so many ways in which you can talk about validity and accuracy in terms of intuitive interspecies communication. So a lot of the time when I engaged with people who were asking about my research, they were first assuming that it was about validity and accuracy, which it is not. So I really made a point at looking at lived experience, and my study is not testing validity or accuracy in any way. Um, so I cannot make any statements about, how well do communicators reports match with animals' realities, or how to which degree are animals like objectively involved in intuitive communications. I can talk about how it feels to animal communicators, and that is important baseline knowledge that then can inform research into those kinds of questions. Just to drop that as a side note.
I think that's a really important point. I'm glad you brought that up, Victoria, because yeah, I find the same thing as well when I'm talking to people that there's this um eagerness to jump to conclusions or questions about asking about, validity, like you said, verifying things. Is it true? Is it possible? But what you just said about having a descriptive basis, I think that's worth talking about because really where the research is at the moment is saying, okay, we would like to study this, but first we need to understand what we can call this and what this looks like and how this shows up.
Mm-hmm.
And right, would you agree? Like that's where we're at currently. And
Mm-hmm.
then, and it takes time. The field is in its infancy, this field of research. So I think
Mm-hmm.
so I remember speaking to someone, actually, Barbara, when we were in Botswana and we met the physician who was there with us. And he was like, well, this should be really easy to test, if it can work or not. Like you should, eventually when he sort of got
Yeah.
a little interested, at first, of course, he thought we were crazy, but slowly he warmed up. And that was his kind of reaction coming from the world of medicine that
Mm-hmm.
this should be really easy to test, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, before we get there, though, we need to have language to know what we're talking about. We need to,
Yes.
um, and I know that comes with its caveats as well. I know that, in the work that we're doing right now, and I'm sure in your work as well, even describing or defining IIC,
Mm-hmm.
it's tricky. It's very tricky. And it's not, we're kind of taking something that so far has been abstract and trying to
Mm-hmm.
find language to so that we can speak about the same thing and we can try to look at the same thing and build
Yes.
a foundation that future research can be built upon. And I'm also very excited about Megan's work, and I find that genuinely just it's such a thrill right now when I hear the different
Mm-hmm.
research projects that are going on because I find every question leads to 10 more questions.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's so many angles to look at this from, and so many different perspectives, different
Yes.
disciplines as well, bring different perspectives and different lenses to look at this through. So, like for us, we have, we're coming from the social sciences, from anthropology. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just interesting how different researchers are going to be going about this. And, I'm glad you mentioned that uh, these conversations you have with people who are jumping to, talking about validity or wanting to know about that. What was it?
Mm-hmm.
What was it like for you to study something that's, just so personal, so sacred, even to many people, um,
Mm-hmm.
and often misunderstood within academia? What was it like to spend so many years devoting your life to studying something that the average person is just not talking about, and definitely within academia,
Yeah.
people don't have never heard of before or misunderstand?
Mm-hmm. There are a couple of points that I can talk about with regard to that. So personally, actually, so I am coming from a natural scientific background, right? So I can personally relate to that knee-jerk reaction of needing proof first and having questions about accuracy and validity on a very personal level. So during the you know, first half maybe or even a little bit longer of my degree, um, I found I experienced very on very on many levels that it was challenging previous worldviews on and previous training of mine, like especially anthropocentric. When you grow up in contexts and worldviews and even research methods that assume that animals are less than humans, right? And so it was at times really intellectually and emotionally and even physically challenging to hold that inner trouble, right? To work with that inner trouble. And in retrospect, I've really come to appreciate that inner trouble though, because when you have questions about, well, but is this real, or like, how does it work? When you dig deeper into the questions you're having, into the assumptions that are standing behind those questions, and the assumptions that you're making maybe about the phenomenon you're looking at, that can really open really interesting venues of investigation, right? So it can really open up new questions about a topic. And so I've become very patient and used to engaging with the troubling moments, you know? And I'm seeing them as I've come to see them as an opportunity um, to, interrogate my own questions and assumptions, as well as to converse with other people about the topic, and to talk with them through their questions and assumptions, and to think about, am I even asking the right questions here? That's a little bit of a lofty description of what's happening. um, a little bit more practical. I actually, when I started this study, I had a lot of fear. I had a lot of fear about investing my time into the topic of, I was very afraid of professional and personal ostracization and of going the wrong way with my career. So there were a lot of fears. But I also am realizing that looking back, there was much less of that than I feared would be there. Much less. I was actually embedded in, environments where the people that I talked to, even when they had trouble with the topic personally on a personal level, they were engaging in really kind conversations with me. They showed interest, and they did not project their trouble with the topic onto me, which was really important. And so I was basically surrounded by a lot of good academics in that way. And I had my supervisor, Dr. Barrett, and then the community started growing, the research community, up to the point, right, where there's like 30 people on the Zoom in my defense, and more people like physically in the room with me. And I'm just in awe of that support and showing and the interest. And so this is kind of like how it went for me, of the experience of engaging with the topic.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would like to, yeah, I was gonna say, well, I'm new to this field of research, but the field of research is new. So I don't know, the timeline is a little, but I have also just in the last, 5, 6 years that we've all known each other, seen it grow, and that community is growing, and it's so exciting to see the community grow, because I think we need that too.
Hmm.
Or
Hmm.
researchers and scientists or animal communicators, or just people who are out there living in this way, engaging with animals in this way. So it's really been wonderful seeing that grow, and definitely a huge source of support. And I just want to thank you for, being honest about the fears, because
Hmm.
I and the inner trouble, because I think that's what good science is supposed to do, you know.
Yes. Yes.
I think it's a really good sign when a scientist, when a researcher is
Yes.
sitting back and thinking about their assumptions and biases, and what kind of questions they're asking. And if they're asking the right questions, that's exactly what we should all be doing, really. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
scientists may, I mean, I don't know, but they may not be doing
Mm-hmm.
because we have this very
Mm-hmm.
this way of doing things in science so far that I don't know if it really welcomes that or creates space for that. And I think this
Mm-hmm.
topic in particular, it pulls you in, right? And you
Yes.
realize, can you really be an observer? You kind of have to, you're kind of diving in there and
Mm-hmm.
engaging with IIC in order to understand it. So there's this like entanglement, right? Which is just,
Yes.
I think, really fascinating in itself. And I'm really happy to hear that the academic community was supportive or at least open.
Yeah.
Uh, I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what we need more of. So, do you think that, for researchers or future researchers who are listening, what kinds of challenges or resistances do you think they could anticipate or that they might be facing in the academic world?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it is the field is rapidly developing right now, right? So we have
Hmm.
we have research on IIC popping up more and more. So I think there will be going forward more awareness of the topic, and all of us together, we will be contributing to normalizing normalizing IIC as a research topic and helping to normalize conversations about it as research and about it as a personal experience too. At least that was my aim, was one of my central aims with the study too. Um, so there is a lot of supportive development for researchers going forward. I think it is also important to find your community and to talk to the people who understand what you're talking about, right? And then I think it is also important not to be afraid of to kind of like develop the capacity to engage with your own troubles that you might be having with a topic, like you said, because those troubles are often really amazing sites of inquiry.
Hmm.
Really, really, really promising sites of inquiry, so to speak. Um, and at the same time, not to be afraid to talk to other people who are new to the topic, who are maybe skeptical about the topic, because there's always something to learn from those conversations with people. Um, of course, it might be very difficult to talk to people about the topic who are not open-minded at all, or who are thinking that it is something that's not worth investigating, or who are critical in a very, negative or derogatory way. That is something that can happen. That is something that can happen in science in general for a lot of different topics, right? Whenever you have a topic that's bumping up against worldviews or challenging, certain a certain status quo, or challenging, certain values that we have worked with in the past, or certain beliefs and understandings, that's when that can happen. Um, but it's important um, to stay grounded. I think also in your passion for the topic, and to be open to whatever you may find. Right. So, like as researchers, we have a duty and a responsibility to have a critical mind, but also to have an open mind and to be able to sit with our trouble and hold our trouble and develop the patience that we won't have all the answers right away. And that is actually what makes, in my opinion, the most exciting and interesting research topics. Um, yeah. does that does that make sense to you?
Yeah, this is fantastic. Everything you're saying is just so amazing. And I love your honesty in talking about the trouble. And I love your perspective when you speak about it, that, these things that could be very disturbing when you're
Mm-hmm.
feeling ostracized and criticized by
Mm-hmm.
other people, if you can look at it as an opportunity to
Mm-hmm.
grow and to learn and to change your own perspectives, I think that's really
Mm-hmm.
important. And I'm just so gratified that things are changing as they are. You've mentioned the last 5 or 6 years. I would say in the last 5 or 6
Mm-hmm.
years, things have changed dramatically in terms
Yeah,
of IIC. But every day I'm still meeting people that don't even know what animal communication is.
of
So,
course, yeah.
it is new and it's very exciting. And we'll see where it goes. And I'm curious, Victoria, about all these years of study. What was it, 6 years that you've been working on this project? Is that how long it's been?
Oh boy, let's just say it was more than 6 years.
Ah, wow, amazing. But
It's been quite the journey now.
I can only imagine. And you've
Mm.
spoken about the communicators and how they've been impacted by this work. But what about you? How has it changed you personally?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like I did a lot of self-growth during that time. Um, and I I just am so grateful that the research topic I was engaging with continued to capture my attention and my fascination, right? Because when you do a PhD, you want to make sure that you're interested in what you're doing, or there's a good chance you won't finish it or you won't make it through that journey because it's one of the toughest degrees, right, that you can do. And so I got to do a lot of interesting things, engage with the topic personally. I was also starting to practice IIC myself, just to try to understand from that perspective better what my research participants were going to tell me, right? What they were talking about, and it also gave me um, inspiration about how to probe during interviews, where to ask follow-up questions and about what, because I was getting more of a first-hand sense for what was happening during intuitive communications. And I still consider myself a bloody beginner. I've kept at it on and off throughout the years, but it definitely um has changed my outlook somewhat because um having experiences myself of communications where the animal feels so present to you and you almost feel the personality of the animal and you can engage in it in a different communicative way. Um, and it has had an impact on how I see the world. And, there's like small things like when I like walk through the park and I come across people who are walking their dog, I say hello to the person and I give like an intuitive nod to the animal, right? So I am much more aware of animals that are present in my physical environment and I try to acknowledge their presence more and I try to be communicative in intuitive ways if I can. And um, just trust that the animals can, hear me, even if I'm not necessarily always feeling proficient at it. And so it just makes me consider, I think, animals in a much more, well, let's say it is making me a little bit more considerate of animals as individuals, of seeing animals as individuals who have their own needs, who have their own intentions, their own interests, their own wishes. Um, yeah.
Wonderful. I've been reading some things I get a lot of information about wildlife conservation and that. What I'm seeing is that a lot of people are talking about how they're so aware of animals as individuals. They
Mm-hmm.
might be at a sanctuary with hundreds of animals, and
Mm-hmm.
they're noticing the distinct, or even with dogs and cats, they're noticing the distinct personalities of these animals and how
Mm-hmm.
important it is to be aware of that when you're working with them. So I love what you're saying about that you're seeing them more as unique individual beings rather than lumping them into some group like a lot of people do. So, what do you see? What would you like for your research to to contribute to the future of IIC and animals in general? What's your hope for that?
So one of the intentions, right, behind the thesis was to provide a shared descriptive understanding and a shared descriptive vocabulary, of what animal communicators experience and do. And the hope behind that was that it can be real helpful for researchers and others who are engaging with researchers on this topic, to kind of like encourage them to work together and help them to work together to make communication about these topics more effective. And so I'm just really looking forward and seeing whether it will be taken up in these ways, what's going to happen with it. And I'm definitely also going to work on putting out the knowledge that I gained, in, collaboration with my supervisor some more. And again, I just hope that it can help normalize the discussion of IIC as a research topic and as a personal experience and make people less afraid to talk about it, because I think there's also, a lot of people who have experiences that could be IIC or fall under IIC, and they're just not talking about it out of fear. And ultimately, by furthering the research into it and furthering maybe also application oriented projects, that have also maybe a research component, which like is ideal in my personal perspective, that ultimately by doing those things, my research can also benefit the animals. That is the ultimate hope. That was the ultimate motivation behind it, right? Because I grew up in the countryside, and nature was always like really an important part of my life. So spending time in nature always felt very uplifting and very grounding to me. And I've been wanting to find a way to give something back, to nature, to the beings that are out there in nature, that are sharing the world with us. And that was the reason why I originally got into nature conservation, into that training and into those studies. And that is still motivating me as I'm doing um, research on ISE.
Wonderful. And how do you, I mean, when I think about my work in the animal communication or IIC, what I
Hmm.
see is that if people can really relate to the animals, as you've said, as individual beings that are conscious and aware and sentient. Once you relate to someone else in that way, you're more likely to want to protect
Hmm.
them and honor them and treat them well. Is that
Hmm.
how you see the benefit of IIC for animals in general?
Well, that is one of my hopes, right? I anecdotally, those are the things that other people have told me about from their experiences. Um, I've had one communicator talk about how it is such an important part of their life and how it also influences everything that they do. Also with, acknowledging the dog in the room and not just the humans. Um, And I think what would be really fantastic to see would be some well-designed research on how is the experience of IIC or the practice of IIC, is that shaping people's behavior over time? Is that shaping people's perceptions over time? So maybe a study with, that follows IIC beginners and students, or we might also be seeing some insight into that kind of topic from Megan's research, connecting the dots of experiences in childhood and with, how that can do in life later on, potentially. So I sure hope so. And we are seeing signs of it. And how big the impact is, or dimension it has, or what exactly its nature is, that is a really important question for further research.
Victoria, one of the questions that I got asked quite a bit when I was doing my fieldwork last year was, how did you get on this path? And how does one get into this field of research? How does one do their PhD in animal communication? My answer was,
Mm-hmm.
that's a great question. I don't really know. So I hope that, the answer really is that there is no particular path, but just that I'd like to think if you follow your heart or you follow the
Mm-hmm.
instincts that you have, you follow your passion, your love, that can somehow, lead into this work.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's not like it's such a beautiful field to be in because there are many layers
Yes.
to being here. And it's one of the things I really love about this research so much is that I don't know about you, but I feel like I can show up authentically and I can show up like in a wholesome way. It's not just
Yeah.
the intellectual part of me that I'm bringing to the table, but I can bring the emotional, the, you know, psychological, definitely the spiritual as well for me. And that feels really special and rare, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest, in academia. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
really curious and excited to see what things pop up in the future, different projects, different collaborations, and I'm really just so hopeful. And people like you, Victoria, are paving the path for us. Like Barbara said in the beginning, like it's been really such an honor to watch your journey. And of course, I hope to be around for all of it and to see all the amazing things you're going to be doing. And it's like we're building a web, we're building this thing together. We're co-creating it, and not just with the humans. That's the most exciting part. We're creating it with the animals.
Yes.
And that's just, I think, so special and so unique about this work. And so tell us now that you've completed this huge milestone. Congrats again.
Thank
What's,
you.
what's next for you?
So I'm currently just as a side note, I mean, it's just been a month, right?
Yeah.
Since I've defended. But I'm currently looking into options of, staying in this field, continuing IIC research potentially, but for sure also first working some more on putting the knowledge that I've gained out. Right now, the dissertation is accessible through the university's online repository. My supervisor and I, Dr. Barrett and I, we have one article out that is based on the dissertation, and there's just more that can and should come from this. So we are currently discussing further research articles that would, for example, discuss some more, the sense-making processes of communicators. Maybe dive a little bit into how do they discern between intuitive impressions coming from an animal and their own emotions and thoughts. Um, Potentially the book, depending on the format, depending on how everything is parsed, like we don't know yet. And things like information materials, presentations are on the table. And so we're currently sorting through what are the best ways in which you can put out what we want to put out from this work. Also in a time effective manner, because there's so much happening in this field right now. I really felt the pressure there at the end to finish, you know?
Mhm.
So many people are working on it now. And so that is the immediate, and my long-term interest is to kind of like circle back to the conservation context. Um, and one of my friends, Sydney Kuppenbender, you've talked to her in a previous episode, I think.
Mhm.
She has written she has done a case study or like has looked into cases of intuitive communication and conservation contexts and has written on that from a narrative perspective. And that was super exciting for me to see. And so I hope that I can circle back into working more on the conservation context.
Exciting. So basically, lots more to come. And you were talking about dissemination and kind of, getting your findings.
Hmm.
So we're so honored, so happy that you could be here because this is, I think it's powerful when more people speak up about this. They share, and especially now with the research, for us to be able to share what we're learning, so to
Hmm.
stay in, academic journals and academic context, but we can actually share what we're doing with everyone wherever they are in the world. And this is
Hmm.
hopefully an accessible way to do that. So we're just so happy for you, and we're so honored that you could be here today, to discuss your research, to contextualize what you're doing in what's happening
Hmm.
with the research, but also, the broader context, why this work is important, where I think we're all hoping it heads, of course, one day to understand animals better and do a better job, engaging with them and being good stewards of the planet and making decisions together and all of that. I mean, there's a long list of things that hopefully will come from this work. We'll make sure that we make your dissertation available online. So really happy that that's accessible to everyone. So we'll put a link to that for sure. And yeah, thank you for sharing all that you did. I think, like you said, it's important to sit with
Hmm.
the trouble, sit with our trouble, not just as researchers, but for everyone to kind of
Hmm.
pause and think about, just to take stock of, why we do things the way we do, why we think the way we do, and not take things for
Hmm.
granted, that I think these are opportunities to really reevaluate who we are, what our values are, and what kind of people we want to become. And yeah, thank you for being so articulate. It was a pleasure hearing you give all your answers and seeing how you explain things. Like I said at the beginning, I love how you explain things. So and thank you for inspiring us and hopefully inspiring a whole, new budding generation of researchers whenever they hear this. So thank you.
Aw, that really makes me feel warm and fuzzy.
I'm glad. I'm glad.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And like research, I feel like for me, research is not done in isolation, right? It's a collective journey and process. So I guess what I want to say is I just also want to give a shout out to, everybody who first of all has led me onto this journey, which is my supervisor, Dr. Barrett, who has been there throughout the journey for me to who has given me a lot of feedback and input and has shaped this work with me together. And so many other people who I've talked to about my research, who have asked me important questions, who have given me feedback again, and who have just been there as a supporting community. So it's been fantastic in that sense, and I feel very lucky in that regard. And on a side note, again, I mean, we were talking a lot about the importance of like descriptive research, right? But for interested listeners, it might be nice to also know that there is a little bit of accuracy and validity oriented research already out there. So one study that was done well, in my opinion, was Dusan Yanak's study. I hope I'm saying that right. And so he found that his conclusion was that animal communicators relatively frequently give socially valid, non-deducible and specific, even if unsystematic information. So socially valid means valid from the perspective of those humans that know the animal in question, like they're human guardians and companions. And unsystematic in that context meant, as far as I understand it, that information could come in about a lot of different topics, and it wasn't necessarily like a connected narrative, as you would get like a one connected narrative report from a veterinarian, but animal communicators might hear things about a lot of different things from the animal. Um, Please correct me, Tucson, if I misrepresented anything in that. But yeah, so if you want to include maybe a link to that in the show notes, so there's a lot of good stuff going on.
And I'd like to thank you too, Victoria. This has been really extraordinary. And I want to honor you for your courage because I've come from an academic, scientific background as
Mm,
well. And it's not easy facing a whole group of people who really don't get what you're talking about,
mhm,
and it can be extremely critical and skeptical of what you're doing. And it's not easy to face that and move through it like you did. You've moved through it for a long time and changed a
mhm,
whole dynamic. So I want to honor you for that. And
mm,
I feel like you and Avantika are this new generation of people who are not just thinking animal communication is something really weird and strange and
mm,
that needs to be proven, but you're getting it. And so it's really exciting that you're maybe not proving that it's valid so much, but just letting people know that there is such a thing and that animals really, really are conscious and spiritual beings. And that's going to change everything. I know it is ultimately. So thank you for the great work you've done and congratulations.
Thank
You're now a
you, thank you.
doctor.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's still sinking in, and it really it means a lot to hear you say that. And it means a lot to hear it means a lot to hear praise and acknowledgement after a long journey like that of being a student and like having to measure up against, external evaluation. And especially when somebody who has such extensive experience themselves with IIC, like you have as a communicator yourself, and you're also with your academic background, you also understand some of those struggles. So it means a lot to hear you say that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So,
a lot of
yeah,
love always on this podcast because it's a community and it's growing and yeah, a lot of love here. So thanks for being here, Victoria. Is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
Um, no, not really. Just saying again that I'm grateful for, having these conversations in a lot of different contexts. And I really hope that maybe the three of us can get together in person at some point, you know, have a tea.
That would be amazing. That would be really, really nice. And I hope, Victoria, we have a WhatsApp group called IIC Nerds, and I hope that
Yeah.
that lives on forever and we can, nerd out in there and um yeah, and that more people will be joining us, along this journey. It's yeah,
Yes.
hopefully a long, long road ahead.
Yes.
So thank you again, and thanks everyone who tuned in to listen to this episode. And we'll make sure we put all the links and information in the show notes. And as always, we would like to end with the blessing for the animals.
We'd like to end this podcast by taking just a moment to be quiet. And we give thanks and blessings to these amazing animals that we share our lives with. They give us so much and ask for so little in return. We hope that you can keep the animals and all living beings in your heart and in your mind as you go about your day. Thank you so much for being here with us today.